All right, guys. First of all, thank you so much for being here. My name's Tony Acosta. I'm head organizer for TEDx Teamview Drive. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys today and hopefully provide a little bit of value. So that's what I do. I've been involved with TEDx for a couple of years now. And why I do what I do really goes back to when I was a kid. You know, I grew up in a very combative household. My parents loved fighting each other. That was what they did all the time. But even as a kid, I'm the oldest of four. And so I was the one that had to referee these fights. So it was the situation of my mom and my dad could never communicate with each other. Who here knows a couple that just can't do it. They can't communicate with each other at all. And so mom would say, hey, Tony, go tell your dad this, and this. And so I would go tell my dad, and then my dad would say, hey, go tell your mom this, and this, because they couldn't talk to each other. So I had to go back and forth. And as I grew, it was always amazing to me that they could take the same scenario and come away with two completely different conclusions. Completely different conclusions from the same event. And I grew up just watching them struggle to communicate. And even to this day, they really just have polar opposite personalities. And because it was such a combative household, I actually grew up with a very strong speech impediment. I stuttered constantly. Every now and then I still do it. If you pay close attention, you can catch it. But I stuttered, and I had one of those like anxious tics. See, I just did it. So I would blink uncontrollably when I was a kid. So as I grew up, more and more there was all of these examples of the importance of communication. My parents' marriage failed, and I believe it failed because they did not learn to communicate with each other. And I truly believe that we are all 3 to 7 difficult conversations away from a different level of happiness. And so when I was introduced to TEDx, I wanted to be a TEDx speaker because I watched the Simon Sinek's and I watched all of the awesome talks, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I wanted to go from stuttering kid to TEDx speaker just because I thought it would be a cool story. But kind of the message that I want to convey to all of you is that importance, right? And as we get into some of these other questions, we'll dive into that. But the question that I always pose to my speakers, who here would like to speak more or speak, it's pretty universal. So here are a couple of questions that I would really quick just share with you guys. Is number one, why would anybody listen to you? And number two, do you have the ability to make it about the audience instead of about yourself? So as we get through some of these other questions, we'll talk a little bit about that. But that's what I do. That's why I do it, because I do believe that if we can all learn how to communicate better, I just fundamentally believe that the world would be a better place. So when I think about next gen, I think of two very specific things. First of all, the next generation. So one of the things that has really helped me was I've tried to identify the things that I saw growing up through my observations of my own childhood and others, and I've tried to identify the things that I don't want to repeat, the things that I don't want to perpetuate, the way that I was parented or the way that things that I saw with friends or mentors. And so I've really tried to dig deep into the things that I want to change and that I want to avoid with my own kid, with my own relationship. And so when I think about next gen and trying to get to that next generation, I would just simply pose that question to all of you. What are some things that you've gone through that you don't want to repeat? And then be willing to do the work to understand why those things may have happened and ensure that it doesn't happen to you. And so when you talk about next gen, Ed Milet has a very famous quote, and he always says that there are families that do very well, but at one point they were not. And there's always the one. There's the one person that takes the leap, that takes the risks, that makes the change, and kind of sets everybody else up. So in my family, I am the one. And that's a huge responsibility, and I feel blessed to be that. Who here feels that they are the one, or they might be the one that has to change things for everybody else? Love it. That's a massive responsibility. And so I was actually just talking about that with my wife as I was coming up here. But if you are that one person, the responsibility of everybody around you is monumental. And if we don't do what we need to do, then it doesn't only affect us, it affects everybody else in the room. So that's when I think of next gen, that's what I think about. I think about changing things for the next generation, but also doing the necessary work in myself so that everybody that comes after can be in a better place because of the adjustments in culture and family and relationship and parenting that I was able to figure out. So when I think of strength in your world, I think of two very distinct concepts. The first one is context, and this is something that I've learned through my work with TEDx. The amount of applications that come in when there's a TEDx event, there's so many, there's hundreds. And as a selection committee, you read every single one of those. And there are some amazing stories. And there's a lot of very, very painful stories. People that go through tremendous hardship. And so as you meet these individuals, as I talk to them, I interview them, they tell me their story, then I take a step back and I look at my life, and it just makes me think, what do I complain about? When there are people who have lost kids, disease, awful, awful situations, and I complain about a deadline or a client, things that at the end of the day just simply do not matter. So that is something that has helped me strengthen my own world, because I used to get overwhelmed with the smallest things. Which brings me to that second concept, which is what is your pain tolerance? So when we all think of going to the gym, you know that as you lift weights, the stronger you are, the more weight you can move. I've translated that directly to my own emotional life. How much pain can you solve for? How much chaos can you solve for? And it doesn't mean, when you talk about tolerance, it doesn't mean just take it. But it means how hot can it get and you can still function. And you can still solve. And you can still communicate. So as I've been able to meet all these amazing individuals through TEDx, I've learned those two concepts. The context of the things that I have not gone through, and also how can I increase my pain tolerance so that regardless of how chaotic things get, it doesn't break me. I can still function, and I can still try to solve the issue at hand without feeling like I'm losing it. So when I think about strength in your world, I think about those two very specific things that if we can all do, we can all solve for more chaos, we can tolerate more, and just like at the gym, we can be mentally and emotionally buff and have big muscles, move a lot of weight. That's something that I've really taken to heart. So for me, specific mentors, there's three of them. The first one is my first broker, my first real estate mentor. His name's Daniel. And very simply, he taught me the value of hard work. Just work hard. And everything you do, strive to do it well. It's amazing how many people don't do that. Just do your absolute best every single day, and good things will happen. It seems like such a simple thing, but I often see a lot of people just doing the bare minimum. So whatever you guys do every single day, strive to do it to the best of your abilities. So that's number one, Daniel. Number two, Sean. So Sean is really the reason why, and I'll talk about this, why I am a soccer coach for my 6-year-old. So on one occasion, he got on stage and he said, guys, we talk about money and we want to have generational wealth and we want so much money that our grandkids have money. Meanwhile, your kid has soccer tonight, or there's a recital this week. And he said, you can't buy back the games. You can't buy back the time. Once they're grown, they're grown. You can't get the recitals back. You can't get the campouts back. And so when I heard that, I thought, okay, what can I do? So at one of the busiest moments in my life, I took what is now my favorite position, which is coach of my 6-year-old son's soccer team, and we better win a championship. Like, it's just being passionate about that. And the last one is Vin. Vin is my speaking coach. And real quick, I just want to share with you guys one exercise that for everyone that raised their hand that want to speak, do the following exercise, and it'll help you tremendously. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab your phone out of your hand, so put it on a tripod, put it somewhere, and record yourself speaking for 5 minutes. Anything that you can talk about. Tell us about your wedding, about a trip, anything that you can easily talk about for 5 minutes, record yourself. And then you're going to do a 3-part review. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to turn it all the way up, and you're going to put it face down on the table. And you're going to listen to it. And you're going to be mindful of all of your filler words. Who here knows what their filler words is? Who are my like people? My ums, my rights? You know what I'm saying, people? Yeah, you'll very quickly realize what those are. So that's review number 1. Review number 2, you're going to turn the volume all the way down. And you're just going to watch it. And it's going to be painful. because you're going to start to realize all of your weird stuff that you do, all of your mannerisms, right? And you'll start to clean that up. Last thing, you're going to go on Fiverr, Fiverr.com. You're going to pay $5, and you're going to have somebody transcribe your video verbatim. Don't get rid of the filler words, and you're going to read it. After you do that exercise, you will now know what you need to work on to be a more effective speaker. What are the filler words you need to get rid of? What are the weird hand things you got to stop doing? And so Vin has taught me how to communicate a little bit more effectively, and that's one of the exercises that completely changed it for me. So I just wanted to share that with you guys today. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Now that we're wrapping up, why should someone follow me? One of the things that I try to share is those experiences that I have through TEDx. So I try to share not only the stories that I get to listen to, but also the concepts, the things that people do well, some of the things that we're taught kind of on the inside to hopefully help anybody that is following be a little bit of a better communicator. And that doesn't always mean getting on stage. For some, it might mean getting up on stage, but it's also communication with your partner, communication with your kids, which in my opinion, those conversations and those moments are even more important. Because yes, it's cool to be up here and have a mic, but you're gonna have conversations with your children that we have to nail. When you're talking about your kids being bullied or they get offered drugs, whatever the case may be, or you suspect that a partner is cheating on you, whatever it is, we have to nail those conversations. And so on my page, I try to share some of the things that I learned through exceptional communicators that I have the blessing of meeting through this platform and pass some of that knowledge and some of that info on to all of you guys.